Alrighty, so we're going to be getting into chapter number 15 today. Um, if you haven't stuck through for the last couple, I recommend you go watch at least the last one just to make sure that you're caught up. So, yeah, we're going to be getting into chapter number 15. Jin Woo was basically still in the dungeon that he had initially started in, but he's just been in a couple of fights at this point. He got into the fight with the Steel Fang, and he did pretty well with those. There were a couple of them. I think there was like 30 or so. I mean, we'll go into that in just a second. But yeah, so he's walking through the subway still. He's noticing that his blade is starting to dull up a little bit because he's been using it so much on all of the Steel Fangs. And yeah, he's worried that it's eventually just going to break because that is inevitably what happens when you use a weapon in these dungeons. And Jin Woo says that he's purchased some high grade weapons before, and they'll just eventually break once he goes through a dungeon or two. Like, it doesn't take much. And then he goes into a story saying that he once purchased a dagger, and it costed more than 50,000 won, which is the currency that they've been using so far, which I think 50,000, that's a lot. So this would be a pretty high-end weapon. I think the sword that he's using is like 3 million won, is, if I remember correctly. And yeah, he said that although it was good to use the weapon in the dungeon for a little bit, it just became a bit more trouble because he got a ton of these magical crystals from it, but eventually it broke, like, pretty much at like the first boss fight. So the longevity wasn't worth it. He says that he couldn't even make ends meet, so he just never bought a weapon again. And then there's like some, I guess, inner monologue going on also. He says that even if it was tiring, I chose to take care of them one by one using my body. And then he says thank you. So it's kind of implied that he's talking to his sword at this point, or the one that it was Kim's, if you remember correctly, the one that he dropped in the first dungeon, the double dungeon. He says, so yeah, he's thanking it. And then we get this panel of all the Steel Fangs that were cut up by him when he got into the fight with them before. I don't know if this was the first fight or the second fight. I think it was like the second one. Yeah, it's good to see the progression of Jin Woo. He's gotten a lot stronger since he even initially got into the dungeon, when he was scared at the top of the stairs, not wanting to go down. Now he has been going through a ton of these Raiken, no problem. And then we get to see a little bit of what the Wolf Slayer, I guess, perk also does. So once a hunter is given this title, they are more proficient against wolves, and then it says a 40% increased experience against beast type monsters. So that can be kind of helpful. And then he's looking in his inventory at this point. He says, or it looks like there's 34 wolf fangs, 2 worn daggers, so like broken down, traveler's clothes, and then also a hearthstone. So I think every Steel Fang is 1 Raiken Fang that you get. So there's 34, so he has to have at least killed 34 of the wolves. Pretty impressive. It's a lot of experience. I think he's level 15 at this point. But yeah, he's excited, or he's surprised by how much there is. He says that it's more than what he was expecting. And then he also got the Hearthstone too, which I think the Hearthstone is the return crystal that he would need if he wanted to go home instead of finish the dungeon. So he's looking at it. But but he decides to just go through this dungeon, whatever it entails. He wants to get the experience. He says that there's no guarantee that there's going to be another chance to become stronger this easily. Um, and then some sort of like he comes to some realizations at this point. He's asking him like, what happens to this dungeon after I use the Hearthstone? Will it just disappear and everything will go back to normal? Will he be able to return to this place and get levels again? And then he's asking is if this is something like a limited event made by the system, it would be possible. So it is this something that the system's making, the one that's controlling his UI. And it seems like he might be dancing on the palm of something that he doesn't know, sort of like the Wukong monkey that was dancing in the palm of the Buddha. I wonder if there's going to be more Buddhism type of information being spread out through this manhwa. I don't know. Let's continue. Jin Woo is thinking advance or retreat. He obviously, if you retreat, you're not going to be able to do that much. And he is someone who at this point he's pretty hungry. He wants to get as much experience as he can, and he throws the Hearthstone back into his inventory and continues on down into the subway. We get another panel of some slashes, and it says that you leveled up. So he's just fighting more waves of the enemies, and we're actually introduced to some more enemies. We get to see a panther, it looks like, and also a monkey. They're called the Razor Claw Briga. I think that's the monkey one in this case, and then the panther is called the Black Shadow Razan. So basically, just fodder. They're all just fodder. It's nothing serious. There's more bodies that are piled on the ground also. And he's starting to feel himself. He can say that he can definitely feel himself becoming stronger. We get a panel of Jin Woo standing on his sword again, like kind of arched against his sword in a way. And then there's also purple lightning sparks that are coming off of his body, and it looks aesthetically really really neat. But it's hard to say whether or not it's not like a power up or what it is. So he's saying that because the monsters that are in this dungeon keep on respawning, they don't feel as though they're real living creatures, or at least he doesn't see them that way. And he relates it more to a game where if he can learn the patterns of the beasts that he's fighting, then he can know where they're going to be coming from. And he demonstrates this ability on some of the monkeys. I don't know. We'll just call them monkeys and panthers. We're not going to remember their names. The brigand and the Raka. So the monkey above and two cats from each side. So he is seeing into Matrix. He takes his sword, flips it up, and then he stabs the monkey that was above him. And then without a moment's hesitation, he cuts through the cats on both sides of him. He cuts off their head. And that's it. He finishes off 3 beast monsters with no problem. That was in like an instant without even blinking. And then he sees a Steel Fang Riken coming from the front. So it's kind of neat to have them give us like these angles that they're coming at. Really gives us a good idea about what the fight is looking like. And no surprise, he cuts the Steel Fang Riken in half. So he's really confident though right now. You know, it's good to see. Good to see. He must have leveled up his sense. It's probably what I'm thinking. Yeah. So that party of enemies was taken out. He realizes that depending on the difficulty of the monster, the name, the color of the name will change. So at first, when he came into the dungeon, the Riken, the Steelfang Riken, they had an orange color on their name. Now at this point, because he's leveled up, they're white. So they're fodder too, also. And then we get a little bit of scaling, kind of an idea. So it looks like the goblins are white, the Steelfang Riken are orange, and then the Poison Fang Giant Sand Centipede, which was from chapter like 4 or so, or maybe like chapter 9, 10, they would be very strong. They are red. But yeah, and then they're white. The Steelfang Riken are white now, so he's become a lot stronger. But despite that, he still has his thing going on in his head. He doesn't think that he's going to be strong enough to fight the boss at the bottom of the stairs, because it's kind of showing that there's aura that's, you know, coming from the stairway that's leading to the basement of the subway. And he just doesn't think that he's strong enough. You know, the old Jin Woo's coming back. It's poking its head out like a groundhog. So yeah, because he leveled up his stat for sense, he can tell that the monster down there is a monster and that it's very strong. He's like, I don't want to go down there. But he's thinking about it. He's looking at his stats. He pulls up the UI. His status is actually looking kind of solid here. He's got level 15, so he is becoming a high value male. His strength is probably like above 30 at this point. I think in the previous chapters it was like level 20. But every other stat, I think there was 5 of them, they're level 24. And they're capping too. He notices that they're not going up higher no matter how many monsters he defeats. So maybe it's like the cap was reached in the dungeon. And on top of all that, the sword that he has is starting to break. There's cracks coming through it. A lot of positives and negatives. Um, he he starts to look down the stairs. He decides that there's no other choice because he is Jin Woo. He is the main character. He steps down into the stairway and onward to the basement. So he doesn't care. It's not going to get any better. He just decides to go. It's kind of what it takes, though. Seems like he's doing the right things, even if on a bad day. You know, you gotta keep pushing. But yeah, he's a bit nervous. He doesn't remember the stairs being as long as they are as he's walking down. He's questioning, is this really Hapjeong Station? Which I'm sure it is Hapjeong, but it's probably, you know, in this instant dungeon, it is like the pocket universe or like a virtual reality type deal. It's kind of what it seems like. But yeah, so Jinwoo got to the bottom now, and as he's taking in the settings, he sees some movement, some splashes in the water because this is kind of like a dirty Hapjeong Station. Looks very kind of sewer-esque with a lot of water, and yeah, there's a big splash that comes through. And before Jinwoo can move out of the way, there is a giant object right in his face, and luckily Jinwoo blocks it with his sword. But even though it blocked him, he blocked it. Excuse me. He went flying, and it looks like he flies into a column, and he smashes the concrete behind it. At this point, he coughs up blood and falls to the ground. looks down at his sword, notices that it's broken, and he is freaking out. Not looking very good. Not looking very good at all. He says that he thought that he leveled up a lot. I mean, he's like level 15. It's not bad. I mean, if this was like Skyrim numbers, I would say 15 is it's like low, but still manageable. Not very strong. Anyways, he looks up and there is a giant snake in front of him. And the name of it is Swamp's Ruler, Blue Poison Fangs Rasaka. And the name is Orange, so probably mid-level is what it would be. Still not red, although orange, it's something. I would say he's pretty strong. If this snake is only orange, it's not that bad. So yeah, although it is huge, like this thing is massive. It's like the snake that's in Harry Potter, probably that size, maybe longer. It's making a ton of scary faces at him. Jin Woo looks up and thinks to himself, "Is this the boss of this place?" As he's thinking that, he flips his sword around, his broken sword, and he puts it in a fighting position. So yeah, he's ready to go. And that's the end of the chapter. It's a good one. Very good.